Welcome to The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Syrett. Global warming is a rise in the average temperature in Earth's atmosphere and oceans. We're being warned repeatedly by scientists that global warming will cause sea levels to rise dramatically, will cause subtropical deserts to expand. An increase in global temperature, they say, is going to cause extreme weather, heat waves, prolonged droughts, crop devastation, and species extinction. And we're being told by scientists that man is to blame. The burning of fossil fuels in our cars to heat our homes and to run our factories has drastically increased the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and CO2 and other gases are trapping the heat from the sun. We're about to meet several individuals, including a journalist and a former TV meteorologist, who maintain global warming is a hoax, being used to scare and control the general population. We'll also hear a proponent of man-made global warming theory who says global warming is undeniable and that it is primarily caused by human activities, such as deforestation and the burning of fossil fuels. Me? I just want the truth, and I'm willing to follow it wherever it leads. It is time to redefine reality.
If you go back over the history of the planet, then the warming that's happening now could well be within scientific and statistical norms. If you take, it all depends on when you start and when you stop. What I do think is utter nonsense is the scenario by the alarmists in the global warming movement that we are facing imminent catastrophic destruction. You know, predictions that the world is going to end are nothing new. We've had them in our life. How many have we had in our lifetimes? And the issue has to do with time frames. If you're talking about post-World War II, there certainly appears to be a gradual warming. Many people have noted that ever since a high in 1998, there has not been a similar peak. For example, the past decade was warmer. Now, they say the warmest ever. But again, that's misleading. When they say the warmest ever, they're talking about the past 150 years of measurable temperature data. That is not the same thing as temperatures going back billions of years.
I hate to sound as if I'm some guy with tinfoil on my head, you know, who's camped out in a basement, waiting for doom because of some cabal, but I will tell you, it's not just global warming that's a scam, it's the entire environmental movement. I started doing research, and I'm just telling you, it certainly sounds like a conspiracy. If you look at temperature records since 1850, we've seen warming on the planet of 0.7 degrees Celsius. 88% of that warming occurred before 1940. That's a very important fact. And can I also tell you there has been no warming since 1998. That's a fact. Al Gore can't disagree with me on that. It's true. I can also tell you in the last 18 months, temperatures are beginning to trend slightly cooler.
What is the connection between concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere and temperature?
Well, you're asking me about the connection between CO2 and rising temperatures. There's an interpretation that rising CO2 concentrations lag the increase in temperatures. But there is always a debate in science between causation and correlation. Are these two things connected by coincidence, by a circumstance which might not be the one that's being thought about? Global temperatures have been rising in the past few centuries. True. The number of pirates has been dropping in the last few centuries. Therefore, if you confuse causation with correlation, you could make an argument that if you really want to fight global warming, you should become a pirate.
How significant a greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, and how much CO2 does man contribute to the atmosphere?
Carbon dioxide, despite what Al Gore will tell you in his movie, where he shows you some graphs, he shows you a chart of temperature and a chart of CO2 side by side, and he says very few people have the opportunity to see this, as if now we're getting to see something special. And you see it for a moment, and at a glance you're going, oh my God, look at that. CO2 is rising, the temperature rising. There must be a correlation. CO2 must be the leading indicator. No, when temperatures go up, CO2 goes up. When temperatures go down, CO2 goes down. It's a lagging indicator. The other thing about CO2 that's very important to note, it's 38 1/1,000% of the atmosphere. What's humankind's contribution to that? We account for 3% of that 38/1,000%. That's it. Folks, we're not causing climate change.
Carbon dioxide keeps increasing, but the temperature actually starts dropping by 1 degree. Then after a few years, you can't say it's just an anomaly. You have to admit that now, after about 13 years, that it really is a situation that the theory is not entirely accurate.
Proponents of man-made global warming insist that human activity, such as industrial emissions of greenhouse gases, are dramatically and dangerously changing the Earth's climate. How do you respond to that?
Well, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has made that report and that claim. The reality is that the claim is not supported by the actual science. It's more of a theory, a hypothesis. You create a scientific hypothesis and you look at observations in nature and you say, okay, I'm going to propose that as carbon dioxide increases in the air, especially by human activity, the temperature will increase. And it seems so up until the period of 1998. But when your theory is not backed up by real-world data, when all of a sudden carbon dioxide keeps increasing, but the temperature actually starts dropping by 1 degree, then after a few years, you can't say it's just an anomaly. You have to admit that now, after about 13 years, that it really is a situation that the theory is not entirely accurate. Carbon dioxide is a trace gas. Trace means incredibly small, way, way less than 1%. You have to understand that, and this is what the warmists don't understand, there's 50 times more carbon dioxide in the ocean than there is in the atmosphere. And it's constantly recycling, coming up from the ocean reservoirs or sinks and coming into the air depending on temperature. When it's warmer in the water, it rises and joins the air. When it's cooler, it drops into the ocean. And so with 50 times as much in the reservoir, to say that mankind's contribution, it's 1/25 of 1% of all the atmosphere is carbon dioxide. But we're only responsible for 3% of that 1/25 of 1%.
There is a connection between CO2 level and global warming. If you look at the isolated data, what we call cherry picking, you can actually find all sorts of data. But what you have to look is that you have to look at the general level. And the general level, it's certainly going up. You cannot isolate a small section and say, oh, here it went down. No, you have to look at the general trend.
Professor Fenster, if I could get your comments in reaction to the claim that man's contribution to CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere is something less than, on the order of something less than 0.0002%.
I'm not sure that this is an exact number, but in any case, the media feels that they have to present both sides of the controversy. But in this particular case, the both sides are certainly not equal. You've got hundreds and hundreds of people that believe in global warming being anthropogenic, and you have a few, I don't know how to describe them, quote-unquote skeptics, that say that it is not caused by human activity. So what I look at the general consensus.
I was at a conference recently. Here I am sitting at a table with the gentleman who really created the art of hurricane forecasting, Dr. William Gray. And he thinks this whole human-caused climate change thing is bull. At the same table, gentleman next to me, he invented the weather satellite program for the United States government. His name's Fred Singer, and he thinks this is absolute bunk as well. Nobel laureates have come forward saying, no, I just can't honestly see how humans are the cause.
Laurie, if I could get you to respond in a general way to the comment made by those that support anthropogenic global warming. that industrial emissions of greenhouse gases are causing dangerous changes to the Earth's climate.
I think that what's happened is that we've leapt to an enormous conclusion, which is that industrial emissions alone drive climate. It's patently nonsense. The climate has been changing for billions of years. We've had 5 major extinctions, all long before mankind appeared on the Earth or burned fossil fuels. The rush to identify man as the driver of climate, what's really been attached to it is a political and social agenda, which is about control of populations.
Definitely the sun plays a very important role in the overall climate. The Earth rotates around the sun along its axis, but sometimes, the axis will shift and you're going to have a slight movement. But in this case, we know that what we are seeing is not due to the sun, it's due to the emission of global warming gases. So the sun has an influence, but the human activity has an influence that is on top of that of the sun.
They're bastardizing the scientific method. They're manipulating data. They're totally trying to trash anyone who disagrees with them.
Why are you so certain the science behind man-made global warming is faulty? Is it the computer modeling you object to?
Well, certainly the computer modeling is suspect. You can put as much junk into a computer model as you want. Now, I will tell you, as a guy who used the climate models as a television meteorologist, those models that we used are the same models that many climatologists are using to predict the future. Those models just fall apart. They're completely untrustworthy.
What's happening is that scientists, through time, can refine their model and they can adjust them. And when you look at overall number of computer models that have been developed, you notice that, yes, certainly there is variation as to what we can expect in terms of warming, by how much the temperature is going to be increasing. All the computer models show that the temperature is going up. No computer model shows that it is going down.
There are 3 major universities with supercomputers responsible for tracking global climate, historical records. Unfortunately, it now turns out that they were fiddling and fudging data. For example, back in the medieval warm period, from about 1100 to 1400 AD, the temperature on Earth rose 2 degrees Fahrenheit for those 3 centuries. Vikings came over to Greenland and planted vineyards. It was a warm period. They simply erased that and pretended it didn't exist. These people actually deleted data that was unfavorable to their cause.
I don't object to computer modeling. What I object to is the argument that a computer model shows it, therefore it's accurate and it must be true.
Like any situation where there is 2 diverging opinions, what you have to do is look who are on either side of the situation.
If the assumptions that the scientists are making in these computer models are wrong, then what they are predicting could be off by enormous factors.
Well, on one side, people that do believe that global warming is anthropogenic, that is man-made, you have essentially all the scientific organization in the world. On the other side, you have a few people that most of them do not have scientific credential. So that's what you have to look. You have to look at the scientific consensus.
When you have mainstream climate science saying the consensus, the debate is over, that's anti-science. What is reasonable to say is we have a theory, it needs more testing, we need to test it more against real-world experience, and we'll learn more as that happens.
There was a leak. I don't believe it was a hack. It was someone on the inside, I'm convinced, who said, listen, I got to blow the whistle on this stuff. They're bastardizing the scientific method. They're manipulating data. They're totally trying to trash anyone who disagrees with them and make them sound stupid and silly, etc. So this leaker, I'm convinced, said, I've had enough. I'm going to put this up on a server and let the world see these email exchanges that have gone between all of these guys, proving that the record has been manipulated. My God, What happened to science? These are just a bunch of young hippies with PhDs who have a political agenda.
There is a humanity-hating philosophy behind some, not all, of the global warming agenda people that literally have openly suggested that the solution is that the world cannot sustain 6 billion plus people, and therefore that we need a drastic reduction in the population of the planet to 1 billion, or some say 500 million.
Let's think about the two guys that came up with the whole climate change scenario. That was Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. They did not believe that people had a right to own property. They did not believe that humans had a right to own any natural resources, timber, oil, coal, minerals, etc. They believed all those were property of the state. They hate big oil because big oil makes a profit. They don't like the coal companies because the coal companies are making money off of a natural resource. They like solar because no one can actually own that. They like wind because it comes in the atmosphere and no one can really own that. So that's where it's coming from. It's a big transfer of wealth. When you think of sustainable development, this was a term and a concept created by the United Nations in order to, as you just described, transfer wealth from, in the United States, for example, from rich to poor, or from those with a higher income to those with a lower income, and on a global scale, taking money from countries like, Western countries, and then distributing it to underdeveloped countries. So it is a huge shakedown operation.
But there is no doubt that we are wasting our resources. There is no doubt that we're burning fossil fuel, non-renewable resources. Even only for that, I think we should control the global warming phenomenon.
Those who are pushing this really desire to eliminate capitalism and free enterprise marketplace that has made the prosperity of North America and Europe the envy of the world. They also want to get rid of national sovereignty and independence of governments. They openly declare that they want global government. If you present a problem that is so large that no nation, not even a superpower like America, can solve it meaningfully on its own, then the only solution will be global government.
Big oil has contributed substantial amounts of money, in the tens of millions of dollars, to various skeptical organizations. The big money in global warming is not in being a skeptic, it's being in the mainstream. Compared to the tens of millions of dollars that the oil industry and other related industries, it pales to the tens of billions of dollars that governments are spending to promote the use of renewable energy. If you really want to make a lot of money in the global warming field, don't be a skeptic, for heaven's sakes. If you really want to make a lot of money in the global warming field, don't be a skeptic, for heaven's sakes.
Now, I will tell you regarding big oil, again, the environmentalists hate big oil. I think you have a responsibility yourself to start digging into the research. I'm not being paid by big oil. I'm being paid by yours truly. I just enjoy this pursuit. I enjoy following the truth wherever it will lead me. And I think that's where people need to go. Follow the truth wherever it leads you.
One aspect of the whole situation that really bothers me is that even if you forget that global warming is man-made, but there is no doubt that we are wasting our resources. There is no doubt that we're burning fossil fuel, non-renewable resources. And even only for that, I think we should control the global warming phenomenon, just not to squander what we have.
The truth is, when it comes to climate change, the general public, people like you and me, are getting a lot of hot air from both sides of the debate. Here's one thing I know. Anyone who claims there's a total consensus among the world's scientists that global warming is real isn't being honest. There are tens of thousands of scientists, some of them Nobel Prize-winning scientists, who are saying, hold on, let's not panic. Richard Sigmund Lindzen is an American atmospheric physicist and an Alfred P. Sloan Professor of Meteorology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Lindzen is known for his work in the dynamics of the middle atmosphere, atmospheric tides, and ozone photochemistry. He's published more than 200 scientific papers and books. He was a lead author of Chapter 7, Physical Climate Processes and Feedbacks, of the IPCC Third Assessment Report on Climate Change. He's a well-known skeptic concerning catastrophic global warming and a critic of what he states are political pressures on climate scientists to conform what he has called climate alarmism. According to Lindzen, there has been no warming since 1997 and no statistically significant warming since 1995. Now, why aren't we hearing that in the mainstream media? Makes you wonder. So before we go throwing hundreds of billions of dollars down a hole or throwing hundreds of thousands of people out of work in order to slash CO2 emissions, we better make darn sure we've got the science right. Anyone out there willing to bet hundreds of billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of jobs that scientists have it right on global warming? I didn't think so. Now, I'd like to know what you think. You can contact me here at The Conspiracy Show through the website, theconspiracyshow.com. In the meantime, don't be afraid.